Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Prix. Joe Samaniego here, along with Kobe Lammers from the Podium Finish, and we have Matthew Bro joining us. Joshua Birch is on his way. He is wrapping up some of the stuff on his channel, so definitely we'll be expecting him shortly. And a big shout to Demas. Definitely, we're excited to have you in the chat room. Thank you for being a loyal viewer, and of course, we encourage everyone to subscribe to the Grid Network so you don't miss any of our programs, and we encourage everyone to also invest in the Grid Network. Join our Patreon, like Colin Show, Mark and Robin have. They help us pay the bills, stay on the air, and of course, through Buy Me a Coffee, you can do a one-time contribution to really invest in the Grid Network and help us stay on the air, because at the end, we're doing this because we love motorsports. We want to provide you the best motorsports coverage, news, and race day analysis. Overall, it's hard to believe, as we were talking about right before the show, second to last episode of Grid Live for 2022 in the pre-race, because we're going to have one more in December for the Adelaide 500 race weekend for the Repco Supercar Series, where Shane Van Gisbergen is trying to get more wins and extend his lead in the grid ranking. But of course, we'll still have the wrap-up show tomorrow, Monday, Grid Encore. Then we're going to start our well-deserved, and for everyone in the motorsports industry, a well-deserved holiday break. Toby, I know you're excited about the holiday break, but I think what we're all really excited about, and the reason why we're all here today, Formula One, Abu Dhabi, the last race of the year. The championship may be over, but when it comes down to second in the World Drivers' Championship, that is still going to be up in the air, and it's going to be really exciting to see how that turns out.
Yeah, and the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix has finally arrived. The final round of the 2022 FIA Formula One World Championship. A different set of circumstances compared to last year. The battle to watch is a second-place battle in the World Drivers' Championship between Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc. Perez starts second with Ferrari locking out the second row. Max Verstappen qualified in the pole, and many have been critical of him for not allowing Perez to pass him last week in Brazil on the final lap for additional points over Leclerc. The start is very important, as they always are in Formula One Grand Prix events, especially if Checo can get ahead of Max at the start and his teammate pulls him a solid by playing defense on the Ferraris. Who's the favorite entering the race to take second in the championship, Perez or Leclerc?
I think we're looking at it. Red Bull have had a better weekend than Ferrari. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm late. I was filming the outro for tomorrow, and I completely lost track of time. I think Red Bull have had a better weekend so far. Max on pole, Checo second. There's been a couple of things going around. Is Max going to get investigated for that pole position? We'll go on to that later. But I think Red Bull have got a much stronger hold on the race than Ferrari. They've really turned up Ferrari here in qualifying. They were nowhere throughout the weekend, struggling constantly. Charles Leclerc, it's you just don't see it hand in hand, do you? Ferrari and a good strategy to give him a head. No, it's going to be Perez finishing second as well, which is disappointing for Leclerc and for Ferrari. I honestly think it might trigger a sort of the Mattia Bonotto clause being enabled that he loses second to Perez.
When it comes down to this, I sort of have to agree with you, Josh. I feel the momentum, especially after qualifying, goes to Red Bull, Sergio Perez. And the start, if he could get a good, decent start side by side with Max Verstappen and lead off that first corner, it's going to be very hard for the Ferraris to get around the two Red Bulls and then proceed to chase down that champion, the second place in the championship. What I do think is going to be a concern, though, Max Verstappen, I think he'll be willing to help Sergio Perez, but how far and to what lane? As long as Perez is ahead of Leclerc, that's the only thing he wants to see happen. He's not, I don't think, going to be that great of a defensive person if he is faster than Sergio Perez. If Sergio Perez is ahead of him, but Max is clearly faster, he's going to try to make the move, I think. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the team dynamic in tomorrow's race.
Yeah, and for me, I'm going to hop aboard the Red Bull train too. I feel like this is essentially Sergio Perez's second place to lose, because I was about to say championship, but Max is like, when you look at the points, Max already won the championship pretty much back in the Netherlands, not even at Japan where he clinched it. But if you look at the points right now, he had 310 by the 14th Grand Prix of the season. Now we're just, they're not, second place isn't even at 300 yet. So that just shows the dominance of Red Bull this season as well, specifically with Max. But I think, especially with the character concerns, I feel like a lot of fans, what you could call casual fans like myself, I'm getting into the sport, saw with Max about the whole rant on the intercom, I don't know what to call it, like the team chats about not letting Sergio Perez through. I think if Max wants to help his teammate get it done, I think Max can get it done, especially considering what Sergio did for him last season at Abu Dhabi, when he made his car 7 lanes wide to make sure Lewis Hamilton couldn't get farther ahead. So I really don't think for Ferrari this, unless they just get out quickly, Charles Leclerc, he just has not been, after he won it, I think it was Austria, he just has not really done much. He's finished second twice. He's finished a couple of podiums, but compared to Red Bull and Sergio Perez, he's not really done much. So I feel like this is Perez's second place finish to lose in the standings.
Yeah, Matthew. And to no fault of Charles Leclerc, there's really nothing he can do. If the car is not capable of allowing you to get up there and fight with the Red Bulls, but I'm definitely gonna hop on the Red Bull train and make it unanimous. I think Sergio Perez, the momentum is definitely on his side. I still don't think Max is going to lay over, and let Perez take the win while he plays the role of wingman. I think Verstappen's still going to go out there, try to win the race, and Sergio Perez, he's probably going to have to control his own destiny and try to stay ahead of Charles Leclerc. But overall, I think the chances of Sergio Perez finishing in second place in the championship are very, very likely, unless something crazy happens with Perez retiring from the race or something like that. But I certainly have to say I have to tip the hand to Red Bull finishing second in the Drivers' Championship as well. And in Q1, we saw some close calls as cars slowed to a near crawl to get prime track position. This includes Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen having a near miss. Sebastian Vettel went through several slow cars on his flying lap. And this is a special question just for you, Josh. Should the FIA add a rule to address this situation, because it could be a safety issue?
Absolutely, they should. And me and Megan and Josh were commentating on the session, and we were like, what on earth is going on? We've got so much traffic, so many people throwing themselves into this part of the track. It's just dangerous as well. And personally, they did introduce a rule a couple of years ago. I don't know if anyone remembers it, the safety car delta line. That's how slow you can go on an out lap. That was after Italy 2019, when everyone literally just didn't get going. So you've got to meet the safety car delta of, I think at this track it's 2 minutes 30, something other than on an out lap. But they were going much slower than in the last sector. But what they were doing was they were blitzing the opening sectors to heat the tires up. So really fast through sector 1, really fast through sector 2, and then slow down into sector 3 for a minute. Crawl along, just see how long he can get. And it was pointless. It nearly cost a massive accident as well. Vettel was lucky to get through that, a big accident. So there needs to be a harsher penalty applied there for drivers being slow on the racing line during parts of the track where there's going to be bigger issues. So definitely I want to see that penalised in the future. And hopefully for 2023, they'll make an addendum to the rules where they say any driver going slow within a three-place grid penalty, something like that as well. And just to round you out what's happened so far this weekend, Dismas has done a great job as well of rounding everything up. We have Nico Hülkenberg to Haas that we discussed could happen on the Grid Tonight show. That was confirmed on Friday morning. So it is Nico Hülkenberg to Haas alongside Kevin Magnussen next season as well. That's continuing as well. Schumacher rumored to be going to Mercedes to be their development driver, so we'll hold on for that. Logan Sargent debuted FP1 again in Abu Dhabi, back in. He got another 100 kilometers. That's another super license point to check. In today's F2 race as well, he did incredibly well. Finished ahead of Jack Doohan. Now, in the championship standings, where are they on my monitor? There somewhere. It's Sargent and then 30 points back is Doohan. So it's important to keep Doohan behind him in the sprint race. Tomorrow's feature race offers more points. So Sargent looks very much likely that he'll stand there as well for the following. And Dismas also saying, I hope Charles Leclerc takes second place in the championship. Could happen, but as we said earlier, it's probably the Red Bull train.
Yeah, definitely on the Red Bull train, and I agree with you, Josh. I think the FIA should definitely have a rule to address the situation before someone ends up getting hurt. I think it was way back in the spring when we had the Australian Grand Prix. I believe we saw a crash with cars slowing down. I think refresh my memory, but I think it was Nicholas Latifi and Lance Stroll in Australia when they were like slowing to a crawl and had the big incident there. So this is not the first time we've seen something like this happen. It's happened quite a bit. I'm surprised we haven't had more incidents like we saw between Stroll and Latifi way back when they were in Melbourne.
Yep, and then continuing on with Formula One at Abu Dhabi. After coming off Brazil, one team that looked very fast in opening practice was Mercedes. And it's very interesting to think for Mercedes that last week at Brazil was the first time they had finished 1-2 the entire season. I don't think if you told us that during the first Grand Prix that it would take that long to happen, but it did. So, however, with qualifying today, back to reality for Mercedes. They do have a third row lockout, though, with Hamilton starting 5th and Russell starting 6th. Unless we have the top 4 have trouble and make contact with each other, Mercedes is really not in winning contention for this. And this also appears that Lewis Hamilton, for the first time in his Formula One career, will go winless. He did just lose his streak as well for poles in a season, which I noticed after not getting the pole today. So let's see if he gets the win today or tomorrow. I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. But that will end a very long streak as well. So starting with you, Kobe, do you think this drastically alters his career plans going forward without a win this season?
Well, Matthew, given what Lewis Hamilton has been saying, it seems like he remains committed more than ever to Mercedes in hopes that the team will give him a car that he'll be able to fight with next season and maybe a few more seasons beyond. I know after Abu Dhabi last year and the disappointment, it seemed like Hamilton might abruptly retire or make this his last season, but he's definitely signaled that he's open to a short-term contract extension with Mercedes that maybe could take him up to being closer up to 40 years old and try to end his Formula One career on a high note. I don't know if this disappointing season will I guess alter his career plans, but I certainly think it'll make him a lot hungrier going into 2023, so he can try to get more F1 victories in his historic career and try to go get another world championship.
Yeah, I mean, after Russell winning in Sao Paulo, it's kind of like an open door for Lewis Hamilton. He could have walked through, but decided not to. He did the gentleman approach and let his teammate have the glory, because we were talking about it in the commentary saying, are we going to see some swap over here? Are we going to see Hamilton go ahead to try and keep that record? But no, to a gentleman and let it through and let George win, because George was just dominant last weekend. From the sprint, that car worked. Brilliant race pace and absolutely fantastic strategy as well. for Lewis Hamilton, I think it's going to hurt because we saw on the qualifying run, he was fastest in the first sector, was quick in sector 2, and made a small mistake coming out of the hotel section at turn 13. And that small mistake cost him pole position. So he was pushing and he could have taken pole. So it sort of sparks in me, which thinks, okay, we could see Lewis possibly have a race strategy tomorrow. But personally, I think this will be the first season that Lewis Hamilton, we already know he's never going to have a pole position this year. Is this going to be the first ever season for Lewis Hamilton in his career not to have a race win? Yes. It's terrifying. This has been such a dark year, and it's just fueling the rumors I've heard that he's going to go away at the end of 2024, and then we're going to have someone else in 2025, and then 2026, Mercedes' next super driver that's being developed in the wings will go up as well into the new car and the new regulations. So Lewis could be around for another 3 seasons, another 2, maybe even another 1. But Mercedes have options, and they've got their eyes on a big, big prize for 2026.
And for you guys, just a quick follow-up for both of you, Josh and Kobe, discussing specifically Lewis Hamilton. I remember earlier on this season when I believe it was Toto Wolff said something about how the reason why Lewis was behind Russell at the start of the season was due to like setup experiments and test experiments. Looking back, if Lewis Hamilton doesn't get this win tomorrow, which will mark the first time in his very long and successful Formula One career without a win in a season, do you think he'll regret being that experimental guy, knowing that he possibly could have won if he wasn't in these test setups? Or do you think these test setups like made him faster overall at the end of the season, which he has drastically improved, just as his teammate has?
I think he will regret that they didn't get off the mark well and that they had to do more testing mid-season because of the new side pods and the new design of the car and the regulations. I think he's going to regret that they didn't nail it as good as they did when the previous regulations changed in 2017 and then before that in 2014 as well. They didn't nail the aerodynamics of the setup. I think he's going to regret the fact that he had a chance for victory in Sao Paulo and it went to Russell. And I think Lewis is going to go away over the winter and sort of analyze everything he can do differently. And I think next year we're going to see Lewis fight back. A bit like in 2010 when Button beat him in the championship. He came back in 2011 and he was slightly more aggressive, slightly more controversial with his comments as well. I think we're going to see that side of Lewis start to develop again. And I think Lewis is sort of inching towards retirement in full knowledge. I mean, he was joking in the press conference about doing a car share with Vettel to tag team the Mercedes seat. That could work, but I think Lewis is going to be going away for the winter in a very interesting position. Last year, it was a dark position. This year, I think it's going to be more reflective because he had a championship taken from him and he hasn't been in contention for this one. Is that going to make him more hungry? Yes. Is it going to make him tired? Yes. So it's how fit can he be? It's going to be, I think, not Australia, where would we start next year? Bahrain, 2022, that is when we're going to see what Lewis Hamilton, 2023, is when we're going to see him capable of. I need a break. 7 months, Megan told me earlier, it's non-stop. 7 months. My brain is frazzled. What do you think?
Yeah. I think we all need a break. That's why we're gonna be taking the Thanksgiving week off, and then we're also gonna be off through the Christmas holiday and through New Year's as well, because it's motorsport season with everything going on all across the world. It can be very, very draining, and most of us aren't even going to the track all the time, like a lot of the media members are. And as I was saying, I certainly think that this is going to make Lewis Hamilton very hungry going into 2023. Hopefully Mercedes will get their car in a much better position next year so Lewis can fight, because I totally agree with what you said, Josh. I think Lewis is certainly a lot closer to retiring from Formula One than we think, than years he has left. And also, I don't see Lewis Hamilton, being the type of guy who just wants to, just ride around like we're seeing, with Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel, just holding on to Formula One. If Lewis is not going to be competitive in the Mercedes next year or the year after that, I think we could certainly see him call it a career. He just really doesn't seem like the type who just wants to just go out there and ride around just for the sake of holding on to Formula One.
Fernando.
Yeah, I think we saw a lot
put down that water pistol.
I think like what you guys are mentioning, I think we saw drivers like Jimmy Johnson in NASCAR specifically hold on a little too long, but now he's coming back. So, I mean, that's going to be a fun experience for 6-ish races, 6 to 10, depending on that. But going back to what we're actually talking about today, which is Formula One, and shying a little away from Mercedes, but we're going to discuss Ferrari a little bit now. And earlier this week, several media outlets reported that Ferrari would change team principal, with Mattia Binotto possibly being replaced by Frederic Vasseur from Alfa Romeo. Ferrari denied the allegations, but in a very interesting way, is what we discussed in our chat. And could the rumors reported distract Ferrari? And if Charles doesn't get second place, is Mattia's future in further doubt?
I think his future was sealed in the Italian Grand Prix when a lot of the Italian fans were ready to lynch him. They lost out on a podium. They lost out on a race win due to their own strategy failures. A moment on, wanted to be thrown out. Not himself, but the team want to throw him out. I also think that they've lost second now in the championship. They've lost the Constructors' Championship. Mercedes are Ferrari on 524, Mercedes are 505. So 19 points between them in the Constructors' Championship. That gap was 80 just 3 races ago. Mercedes have been dominant again in terms of their own little pace. Red Bull have won the Constructors. Ferrari started this year with 2 wins out of the first 3 races. They've ended it with only 4 wins this entire season. It's impossible for the team, and I think they need a structure. But the problem is, as we talked about on the grid tonight as well, there's nobody really to replace him. Frederic Vasseur has sort of been issued that he could do it, but he's happy at Sauber. Is he really going to want? Sauber's got Audi coming in. Does he really want to move over teams that quickly? Because Alfa Romeo Sauber, he's the team boss there. Audi are coming in. He's been working with Audi. Are they going to want to let him go that soon? No. So I think Ferrari are pretty much stuck with Binotto for another year, unless they bring back the man who's just about to leave Formula One, Ross Brawn, and give him the team principal role, which Ross seems very much happy to do. And there's been a lot of talks this weekend as well in the paddock. That's why I was just double checking on my phone. The fact is that Ross is actually at the track. It's his last Grand Prix weekend working for Formula One management before he leaves. And he has been in the Ferrari motorhome a lot this weekend. So all I'm saying is it could be that something's being pushed around, and Jean Todd's been on gardening leave for a year and a half now, so he could easily swoop back in. So Ferrari have a plan, but nobody else knows what the plan is. I think it's called Plan F as well. Nobody will know until race 1, lap 3 or something like that, because they've got no idea what the strategy is anymore. But Mattia won't be there in 2023. I'm almost 100% certain on that.
Yeah, Josh. I don't think that whatever happens this weekend with second and the Drivers' Championship is going to have any major impact on Mattia Binotto's future. As you're saying, it's already, his fate is already sealed. I would be very surprised if he returns in 2023. And of course, when you're hearing rumors like this in the media, it is very distracting. It's very frustrating for the team. But it really hasn't been a good year for Ferrari. Kicking off the 2022 season, it really seemed like Ferrari was going to be in a really good place. We were expecting another solid championship battle this year, between Verstappen and Leclerc, but the Ferrari just fell off while the Red Bull just kept on going and improving, and Ferrari wasn't able to improve their car, and they just didn't have it this year for Red Bull. And as we were talking about on Wednesday night, Josh, when you're at Ferrari, you have sky-high expectations. You're expected to be up there contending for wins all the time, contending for the championship year after year, and they have this young generational talent in Charles Leclerc. And frankly, right now, Ferrari is just wasting his talent, and that has to be very frustrating for Leclerc. So if 2023 doesn't go well at all for Ferrari, Leclerc may have to start thinking, that grass may be greener on the other side elsewhere. And got a comment there from Dima saying that this is the last dance for Sebastian Vettel. You say Fernando Alonso. Well, Alonso at Alpine be switching to Aston Martin next year. Yeah, Pierre Gasly will be replacing Alonso at Alpine, leaving AlphaTauri. Mick Schumacher, his future is up in the air, and Nicholas Latifi going to be out of Formula One. And we'll certainly be talking about all of those drivers in just a little bit, Dimas, in more detail.
Definitely. And one fun thing I like to point out, just statistics-wise, before I get into the next part of the segment, is that if George Russell does, in fact, go back-to-back with fastest laps, because George Russell has had the fastest lap in, I believe, for the last 5 races, for the last 5 Grand Prix. So if he does win and somehow Leclerc and Perez wreck each other, Mercedes can jump from what would be 4th in the standings to 2nd. Very, very unlikely, but just for fun, it could happen. So we'll see. But now we're going to touch on somebody Demas just mentioned as well, and what you could argue one of the best to ever do it. And he did drive for Ferrari, and that man is Sebastian Vettel, the 4-time world champion. This weekend is his final race as a Formula One driver, not according to Lewis Hamilton. He thinks eventually, but the drivers are just showing so much support for him, and it's an absolutely incredible sight to see, including a photo of all 20 drivers dining together with Sebastian Vettel, and then the big group photo afterwards. I think that kind of blew up social media, Twitter, everything, whether Twitter was going to go down or not. At least we saw that photo. But Vettel has had a tremendous amount of respect and a huge fan following since he started way back in 2007. So for you, Kobe, let's start with Joe. We're going to bring Joe back here. What will his legacy be, and will there be a void with Sebastian Vettel on the grid this season or next season?
I think there will be a void next season when Sebastian Vettel is out of the car and not on the grid. But it's not the void of a multi-world champion not being on the grid. We've seen the sport have drivers like Alain Prost, Michael Schumacher, great drivers with multiple champions leave, retire, go on a different venture, and the sport continue. And Formula One is at an all-time high when it comes to popularity, especially here in the United States. The void I think is going to be more felt is when it comes to activism that we've seen from Sebastian Vettel. As we all remember, when Formula One introduced the We Race as One campaign, almost all the drivers will wear the We Race as One and racism t-shirt. Some will stand, some will kneel. Vettel, he was almost always taking the knee. He will bring shirts that would say, for example, LGBT rights when they were in Hungary, women's rights when they were in Saudi Arabia. You don't have that with really any other drivers besides Lewis Hamilton. So I think there is going to be that void. Even in climate change, Sebastian Vettel has been upfront talking about it, where I think most drivers won't be talking about that. So I think that's the void we're going to be feeling in F1. So we're not going to have that driver taking these stances and making his voice heard on the grid. So it's going to be really interesting. I think that you're going to feel the void with that, and especially when Lewis decides to hang up the helmet someday too.
Yeah, certainly, Joe. And I know in the past on Grid Tonight we talked about I guess in relation to the NASCAR Cup Series, talking about voice of the garage and drivers stepping away. I know when we first started doing this on Grid Network, we were kind of getting to the end of that transition. You know, where the Jeff Gordons, the Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s, the Jimmy Johnsons, all of those drivers, you know, that we were watching like for the past 2 decades or so, that when they started walking away, we started seeing a group of younger drivers entering the sport. And we were wondering, you know, when Jimmy Johnson retired from NASCAR full-time, who would become the voice of the NASCAR garage area. And I'm wondering the same thing in Formula One, in the Formula One paddock with Sebastian Vettel. I know Lewis Hamilton will still be there for a little while. But Vettel leaving, I think it's going to leave a huge void inside the paddock. Vettel is, you know, one of the more important voices in the paddock, as you mentioned, Joe. All the things that he's done, you know, use his platform. You know, some athletes, you know, they don't use their platform for anything, but some of them really do use theirs for good. I think that's something that Sebastian Vettel has really been able to do. I know during the first half of his Formula One career, he was, you know, going out there, winning races, dominating with Red Bull, found some success at Ferrari, but wasn't able to do what many of us expected. And by the time he left Ferrari, he looked absolutely miserable. And now he seems like he's in a really good place at Aston Martin, and he's going to be able to finish his career out on a high, although he's not up there competing for race wins and championships like he used to. I think the second half of Sebastian Vettel's career, he's certainly become quite a leader in the sport and an activist, a true gentleman. And Sebastian Vettel's really going to be missed. I know. As I said, we're going to have Lewis Hamilton stand on. He's going to remain one of the key voices in the paddock. But you know, losing Sebastian Vettel, and when Lewis Hamilton leaves, who's going to fill that void? I know Max Verstappen, now a 2-time F1 world champion, but he's, there's still a lot of questions about Max's maturity level, and he really doesn't seem like he's interested in taking that leadership role.
How would I describe Sebastian Vettel? Ferrari fan, because everybody's a Ferrari fan. Hard, aggressive racer. In his early days in Red Bull, spoiled, but God-given talent. Multiple world champion, legend of the sport. We forget he's a 4-time world champion. He's been around a bit. Determination and a absolute stunning ability to get the best out of a car. He was Brazil 2012 always comes to mind as well, when he was having to run as well with half a floor missing and still took the championship. Finished on the podium here in Abu Dhabi in 2012 as well, after starting from the pit lane. He's an impressive racer. He's a fun driver as well. In terms of, that's him as a driver. As a person, Sebastian is warm, he's loving, he's kind, great sense of humor, loves British comedies as well, classic British comedies. That's something that's made me quite fond of him as well, as a fan of old classic British comedies. He loves like Dad's Army, Hello Hello. He loved and laughed a lot with the German voices. Everyone spoke English, but they put a little bit of an accent on. So when you talk French, you sound like this, and when you talk German, you sound like this. And when you speak British, it's hello chaps and all this stuff. Very posh. It was a fantastic comedy, and everybody loved it. And Sebastian loved it so much he got it in, and that's where you might see everyone going, "It is I, Leclerc," because when Leclerc joined Ferrari, everybody was saying his name's Leclerc, just like Michel Leclerc and Hello Hello. And it was Sebastian who showed Charles Leclerc Hello, and he got in on the reference. And then all of a sudden, we had this weird 1990s BBC One comedy, Hello, was suddenly being quoted in the F1 paddock. And I loved that. And it was all because of Sebastian Vettel. I found it hilarious. We had Leclerc going up and down with a monocle, saying it is I Leclerc. So that was quite funny. So he spent so much time in Britain as well. He's an honorary Brit. He's such a down-to-earth guy. I think in the past couple of years, he's been an eco-warrior. He's been passionate as well on correct stances as well for equality in the world. And I think Sebastian will go down as one of the loveliest guys to ever have been in Formula One. There's two sides to it. He's like Senna. He is a modern Senna. Hard, aggressive racer. On track, do not get in his way. On his days, unbeatable. Off the track, he's the kindest, most charitable man on the planet. It's exactly like Senna, and it's exactly like what Sebastian is. People always say, "Oh well, Lewis is like Senna. Lewis is like Schumacher. Senna is like Sebastian." It's that for me, and I think that the sport is going to lose a great personality. And I really hope, I've said it for years now, he comes back and he does some role with the FIA, whether he's head of the GPDA. As the president, whether he's F1 steward or F1 race director, the sport could not be in safer hands with Sebastian, because he's a racer. He understands it, and he's the purest racer we've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, and for Sebastian, just want to point out very quickly, we're going to discuss him a little more, but one of my most recent stories that just came out with Last Word on Motorsports, I'm doing a little self-promotion here. It's about Project 91 and 5 drivers who should be on Trackhouse's radar for the 2023 and 2024 season. 2 of them are on the current grid right now. One of them is of current Formula One grid. One of them is retiring, who we just may have mentioned. I'd love to see Sebastian Vettel in a Cup car in NASCAR next season. And then another one we're going to mention just signed a Red Bull deal to be their 3rd driver. So I'm going to throw it over to Kobe when we discuss some of those said drivers.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun to see Sebastian Vettel racing in NASCAR in Project 91. And if the summer series continues, I'd also like to see Vettel running the SRX series as well. And Vettel, along with Daniel Ricciardo, as you mentioned, Matthew, Helmut Marko told Sky Sports F1, that Daniel Ricciardo will test and reserve driver next year. as well as Latifi, Mick Schumacher, they're not going to be racing in Formula One next year either. Schumacher has been replaced by Nico Hülkenberg at Haas, as we alluded to on Wednesday night, Josh, and Mick Schumacher ended up qualifying ahead of Kevin Magnussen for tomorrow's season finale, but his downfall was ultimately due to too many mistakes that proved costly and lack of consistency in his performances. So what's next for Mick's career, and do you feel that Hülkenberg is the best choice for Haas moving forward?
Hülkenberg is definitely a choice for Haas, and at the moment, I think the best choice to replace Mick, because there's nobody else really to fit in that seat at Haas. They've sort of run out of all their options, so definitely it's a good call to get Nico back in, but he's never had a podium. So Kevin has, Nico hasn't. He's got the record, actually, for most starts without a podium in Formula One. For Mick, well, he's got two. One, he gets the Williams seat if Logan Sargent doesn't get the super license points, but that's looking more and more unlikely after today. And two becomes Mercedes' third driver, replacing Nick de Vries, which is possibly more likely. And then the possibility of a race seat in 2024 at one of the Mercedes Powers teams. So it looks more likely that it's going to be Mick joining Mercedes because, as we said on, Wednesday night, it should have been Danny Ricciardo to Mercedes as their third driver. But now over this weekend, it's developed that he's actually gone back to Red Bull to be their development driver, as Helmut Marko confirmed it yesterday. So it looks like basically you can just say whatever you want and it happens in Formula One these days. So in that case, I'd like to replace David Croft and have Martin Brundle alongside me in the commentary box. And I think we should get BBC weather girl, my personal friend, Abby Dewhurst, presenting the coverage as well. I think that'd be a perfect one. But I wish never gets either. But honestly, I think Mick is going to be at Mercedes. That's his career. Daniel could be at Red Bull. But I do feel sorry for Mick because, yes, he's crashed a lot. He's been judged on 2 years. Last year's Haas was the worst car on the grid I've ever seen, and that's beating the Arrows from 2002. That was an absolute useless car that never got going. It's worse than the 1997 Lola. That's how bad the Haas car was last year. It's worse than the Lola. So that's unfair. And then this year, he has crashed a bit too much, but he's had Magnussen alongside him. So we couldn't deflect off of Mazepin because it was Magnussen this year. So very weird. So I feel sorry for Mick. He's got the talent. He's a world champion in Formula 2. We'll see him sometime down the line. He needs a year to develop a bit more. Then we'll have him back. I think Mercedes 2024.
You hit a lot of great points, Josh. And one of the big things with Haas last year, Mazepin, Schumacher. Mazepin, I think it really shows how a funded driver could get away with much more, or as some colleagues will say, have more time to develop, because Mazepin, 21st out of 20 drivers. Mick was not crashing as much as Mazepin. But at the end, we know Mazepin, he got out because of what happened with the situation between Russia and Ukraine. That's how Magnussen got in. If it was still Mazepin, Mick, I am confident Mick will be ahead. Potentially, Mazepin will still be behind. And one of the things will Mazepin really replace, because he brought a lot of funding, a lot of sponsorship. Now, with Nico Hülkenberg, he has a fan following. We've seen what he could do as a super sub. He has the experience, so you're not bringing in a rookie, which Haas did that last year. 2 rookies, you had quite a lot of mayhem with that. Then now, with you're going to have Kevin Magnussen coming off a great season with the Haas, scoring points. I do got some confidence that I think with Nico Hülkenberg, he'll be putting his vehicle in point contention. Getting that podium, that's going to be really hard with a Haas, unless you have something like Brazil qualifying where the Haas ends up at the front row, just to avoid Daniel Ricciardo on that first lap, which he'll be sidelined, so you don't have to worry about that. But overall, I feel this is, I think, the best move that Haas could do. You got 2 experienced drivers, but the one thing, though, Mick, much more beloved, I think, by a lot of fans compared to his teammate of last year. But if he had more funded, will we be having this discussion? That's where I'm really curious if that was one of the issues, was the amount of sponsorship money he brings to a team.
Yeah, really disappointing for Mick Schumacher, been out of Formula One after just a couple of seasons. And I know we've made this point over and over about Mick. It usually takes several seasons for him to, really develop. And that's what we saw during his career in the junior category. Obviously, Formula One is much harder than those other championships that he found a lot of success in later on after really getting used to the car. I think get 2 more seasons, we really start to see what he can do in Formula One. But that dream is over for now. But it's not over, as Mick said in his statement after announcing his departure from Haas. The fire to be a Formula One driver moving forward in the future is still burning deeply inside him. I'm sure he's going to do whatever it takes, whatever role he's going to get in Formula One next season. As Josh mentioned about the reserve role in Mercedes, go in there, do the simulator work, do absolutely everything Mercedes asked of him, and tried to put himself in a really good position to be on the grid in 2024 or even 2025. And getting back to the question about Hulkenberg, yeah, he was really the only choice that Haas could go to at this point, because there are really no viable options. Yeah, there's no. I'm sure Haas don't. They chose experience next year over youth, and they made the mistake, of having Schumacher and Mazepin. I remember when they announced Schumacher and Mazepin to Haas, and we were actually here in the air questioning that decision, Joe. I remember they're like, why are they putting 2 rookies in the car instead of just one rookie and one veteran? Because that's typically how it goes in Formula One. Because usually when you put 2 rookies in a car in F1 when they're so inexperienced, it usually doesn't go well. So the next time around, Haas just choosing experience, and I really think they won't make the same mistake twice.
Sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, I was like, who's talking next? Have I missed part of the script? Go on, Matthew.
No, I was going to say I can agree with that statement too. I accidentally muted myself, but I was going to ask. I asked a comment like a little backstage, like why would they choose Hulkenberg instead of like one of the Formula 2 drivers like Drugovich, Lawson, or is it Pouchier? I'm not really
Pourchaire,
yeah.
Yeah, Tail Pourchaire.
But now that I think about it, absolutely, like we saw a failed experiment with putting 2 rookies in the Formula One grid. So why would they choose to do 2 young drivers again? So I think you guys answered my question there, and I appreciate it for that. But now it's time.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was going to say Schumacher did actually win the F2 Championship. Mazepin never won anything in that career. So Mazepin was sort of the wild card. We expected Schumacher to do well, didn't, because he got held down so much. I think actually the best of the bunch there would have been Drugovich, F2 champion, very quick driver. Mm-hmm. He's. I think that Drugovich reminds me so much of a younger Sebastian Vettel. I think it would have been nice to have him in there.
Is there, before we get into our favorite game, is there any rumor with him? Is he have a seat locked up now that he's Formula 2 champion?
I've heard nothing. I know he's the Aston Martin reserve driver for next year, but I've heard sadly absolutely nothing as to whether or not he's going to get a race seat eventually, because it should have really. Alonso's gone over to replace Sebastian. Alonso's gone over from Alpine to replace Sebastian Vettel. And then Drugovich sort of got tagged on after he became the F2 champion at Monza. So it's disappointing. So I think next year he's going to be a mix of third driver role and Super Formula in Japan. I think also I did hear something that he wants to test some Indy cars. Don't know if that's going to be put anywhere, because I think the grid's pretty much locked in. But that's been something that's been flying around this weekend, because he was in practice 1, of course, for Aston Martin. So there was a lot of people talking about him, trying to find out what his things is for next year. I heard WEC as well. I heard WEC as with an Aston role in the GT team, so that could be something. But they've got good GT drivers, so we'll figure it out, and we'll know more hopefully in January.
Yeah, and also speaking of Super Formula, Liam Lawson, Tail Pourchaire, there's been a lot of rumblings in the media lately that those 2 drivers are not going to return to F2 in 2023, and they're going to be racing in Japan as well. It seems like we're going to have quite a few international drivers racing in Super Formula. Super Formula, second fastest car in the world, to Formula One, and it's a really good experience for those young drivers. I know we saw Pierre Gasly when he won the GP2 championship. He spent a year in Super Formula, really refined his skills as a young driver, and then he was able to go to Formula One. So just because you go over to Super Formula, it doesn't mean the F1 dream is over. So there's a lot of hope still for Liam Lawson and Teo Pourchaire moving forward in the future, and still for Felipe Drugovich. It's unfortunate when you win the F2 championship, you can't move up to Formula One, but unfortunately, that's just the business model and the system that we're in. And next year, like Mick Schumacher, come in, do everything they ask of you, and try to raise the funding and do whatever you can to put yourself in the position to get a race seat in 2024.
Awesome. Thank you both for answering that, by the way. I think that cleared up a lot for me as somebody who's more getting into the sport as well. But now we're going to still stay on the Formula One topic. We're going to do everyone's favorite game today, which is pick a winner. So Formula One had Hamilton and Verstappen tied at this point last year. Now we're going a little bit between Leclerc and Perez tied, except this time it's for P2 because Max Verstappen kind of just took off and just never stopped. And this year, Kobe and Joe are actually tied, but there are still 2 more supercar races in 2 weeks. So I feel like this might be the deciding factor between Kobe and Joe for who gets it done, because I have a feeling they're both going to pick the same person for supercars. But so still everyone in the top 10, or still time for everyone to get in the top 10 and for that tie to be broken. So we're going to start with Joshua here. Who wins the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix tomorrow?
Sergio Perez. I'll go different. I think Perez will win. I think Max will get a bit too aggressive and something will happen. I think Perez will have the pace. He's been quicker all weekend long, but I don't know where Verstappen's pole that came from. It was a complete flash of the pan. I think Perez will win tomorrow with a good strategy.
Awesome. And then going to me, I'm going to go completely different than all of you, and I'm going to go against what Josh said earlier. I think Sir Lewis Hamilton can finally get that vengeance and get it done. I don't think it might happen. You never know, but I mean, if we've seen from the 7-time, pretty much 8-time world champion, that this is a track for him. So you never know. So I'm going to go with Sir Lewis Hamilton for the final time this season.
I think I'm going to
Team LH comments. There we go. Goodbye.
I think I might be in agreement with Joshua. I think Sergio Perez, he is fast. He is faster than the Ferraris. It was interesting in qualifying. He was faster on the straightaways, Verstappen faster in the corners. So I think Perez is going to get around, particularly with the pit stops. So that way they could give him the opportunity to get that win, secure second place, not worry about Leclerc because he'll be 3rd or 4th, assuming Ferrari has a clean race. Sergio Perez is my pick for pick a winner.
Yeah, it would be great for Sergio Perez to end the year on a high note with the victory here, especially after what happened last week in Brazil between him and Verstappen. And Joe, I know we're tied right now at the top, and we're probably both going to be picking Shane Van Gisbergen and to sweep the weekend at Adelaide. So I'm going to go with a different pick of winners to see if we can decide this year's championship right here. I'm gonna go with the world champion Max Verstappen. Someone different. So I'm not playing for the tie. I'm playing for the win.
And go for that. I was petrified for a second.
We all picked 4
Need
different
someone to call.
And of course, with the pick a winner rules, if there is a tie at the end of the season, the last person to hold the lead before the tie would have the tiebreaker. So we're still tied, and we both picked Shane Van Gisbergen next weekend. Kobe would be the champion. But we'll see what happens after this race weekend at Abu Dhabi. And of course, after the race weekend, we'll be on the air right here on the Grid Network, approximately 90 minutes after the race. And we're streaming not only here on YouTube, but we're also streaming on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and LinkedIn as well. Follow our LinkedIn page, and of course, follow us in all over social media. Take a moment to invest in the Grid Network. Call the show Mark and Rob and invested in us. We're getting excited and ready for 2023. Yeah, it's going to be a long season, but once we get the winter break in, we'll be fully recharged for IMSA, the Rolex 24 Hours, and then, of course, the Clash at the Coliseum, and then the great world of motorsports under the Grid ranking and sports cars with the new Endurance Performance Index. Big thank you to Edward, Amber, and Zach for contributing, investing in us through Buy Me a Coffee, and more news on Buy Me a Coffee later on. Public.com, great way to invest in the stock market. Use the referral code GRIDnet and get some free stocks without using your money at first. Use our tools to learn about investing in the stock market, public.com. And in case you missed it, Roundtable. Newest episode is up. We have Matthew, we have Joshua there, along with Ben and Daniel discussing should there be a red flag or overtime rule, or just let the race end under caution. Great show. We had a lot of fun. It's a little bit late for the show participants of Joshua and Daniel, but we thank them for being part of that, and we encourage everyone to comment with their opinions as well. And of course, link in the video description. Subscribe to Joshua Burst's channel as he's getting closer to 1,000 subscribers. We're getting close to 500 subscribers, so be sure tell your friends hello motorsports. Subscribe here. We'd love to get 500 before the Daytona 500, 500 before 500. Share that with everyone because 2023, we're really excited of the potential right here on the Grid Network. From Matthew Bro, Joshua Burst, and Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time and enjoy the races.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.